Tears of the Kingdom is finally here, and the wait was absolutely worth it. I'm still in the middle of my casual playthrough, and I'm loving every second of it. Since I've speedrun Breath of the Wild for thousands of hours though, I can't help myself but try and come up with some optimal ways to play and conquer this new, unknown Hyrule. But before we get into the tips, it's time to quickly make sure I can sustain this unhealthy lifestyle of studying a children's video game for like 15 hours a day. So please let me introduce this video's sponsor. So I have played an unhealthy amount of Genshin Impact, and that's why I'm excited to introduce you to its developer's newest game. Welcome to Honkai Star Rail, a new multi-platform space fantasy RPG from HoYoverse. In Honkai, you get introduced to a big, ever-expanding cast of beautiful designed characters with compelling backstories and personalities. You get to explore diverse space worlds in which you can find treasure chests, solve puzzles, or just soak in the stunning atmosphere of different planets. You can then level up your characters to make them stronger in combat and maximize their potential, which is something I typically enjoy the most. It wouldn't be a surprise to you that I love min-maxing in video games. The game features turn-based gameplay that's easy to understand, but offers depth too, so you can still hone your skills. But what I'm most excited for in this is music and visuals, which have always exceeded my highest expectations in Genshin, and this game is going to continue that trend. Honkai Star Rail is out now on mobile and PC. The pinned comment and description feature a link where you can download the game, and I will be playing it myself, so I'm excited to explore space with you. So before we get into the tips, one more final warning. I won't be discussing story or showing big story elements in this video, but you might be seeing items, zonai devices, or even areas you haven't seen before. I'm going to try to stick to basically early game areas that you've probably seen in the first 10 or so hours when descending onto the surface, but keep that in mind, you might see an item you haven't seen. This is just the nature of these videos, so if you really don't want any spoilers, it's probably still not a good video for you. But basically the idea of this video is to show you tips that will help you to essentially get around easier and maybe find some early efficient speed tech. And I want to start with fusions to shields. I've seen a bunch of videos already that explain fusions to your shield, but I want to point out some specific ones that really stick out. I think the first one is probably already relatively known. Fusing a bomb to your shield essentially allows you to do somewhat of a wind bomb. It's not quite the same, but it gives you some great height, and I'm assuming it's definitely going to be used quite a bit when you basically cheese shrines later on in speedruns and whatnot, because you can technically do it within shrines, and it's just very powerful. Keep in mind though that bomb floors are relatively rare to come by, and they're pretty valuable in terms of damage, but it's definitely a pretty cool thing to do. You can also use it on sloped surfaces to get some sort of forward momentum. The next one is maybe a little bit less known, because when I first tried to use it, I didn't really get the benefit of it. But you can fuse a wing to your shield, and not only does it look relatively cool, but it basically has like a hidden benefit. So when you shield jump a little bit higher, which is already useful. So you can do like further shield jumps to maybe cross bigger gaps, but what makes this, in my opinion, one of the most powerful fusions is that you can bullet time out of a standing jump, and this makes this very strong. Imagine you're fighting a Hinox, you're fighting an enemy that has a weak spot, being able to basically jump, bullet time, and then hit their weak spot quickly is incredibly powerful, and something that I would recommend you to learn. The timing isn't very hard to do, but again, it's certainly pretty powerful. Next up is basically a similar thing to the bomb. If you don't have a lot of bombs in your inventory or you want to save them for combat, springs kind of act as a similar device. You can fuse them to your shield to get a little bit of an extra height in your jump. So if bomb flowers are something that you want to save for, let's say, combat, then the springs will help you basically fulfill the same purpose. Now, last but not least, something that I think is really cool is that you can combine these fusions. This is something I haven't really seen many people do. You can prepare them. So let's say you place down a bomb and you fuse it to your shield, but you don't actually use it yet. This will basically be saved in your inventory. then you take out the second shield and you fuse a rocket to it. We haven't talked about rockets yet, mainly because this is probably the most known fusion. It was literally showcased in the trailer of the game. Fusing a rocket to your shield is basically our new version of Rivali's scale, and it sends you straight up. But I want to show you a different version of this, which is taking the rocket, fusing it to your shield but not using it quite yet, and instead starting basically a combo with a bomb jump, then changing your shield, and then going like straight forward. This is something that I haven't really seen a lot of people do. It's essentially a combo. So you first fuse your bomb to your shield, you kind of save it, so you don't actually use it yet. Also fuse a rocket to your shield and then combine them. And I'm assuming these combinations can go even crazier. Like I could have had another rocket fused to my shield to go all over the place. So these are basically our basic shield fusion combos to go fast in the game. And I think they're really powerful. So once you really get to exploring the world more, maybe it can be a good idea to make use of these combinations. Now, next up is what I like to call the Autobuild Windbomb. Autobuild is an ability you get from exploring the early game underground areas. There's a main quest that essentially leads you there. And what Autobuild is, it allows you to save basically your favorite contraptions. And I have only saved one of them as my favorite. You can actually have 8 favorites. Basically, whatever you build will be saved, and if you press Y, you can make it a favorite. And this is the Autobuild Windbomb. It basically is a plank fused to a rocket, and it will cost me 6 Zonite to build. So if I have nothing, and I'm stuck out in the open somewhere, I can pay 6 Zonite to build it. Now keep in mind, if you have a plank around, or a rocket, you can save some Zonite when doing so, but it works if you have literally nothing. And what you do is you basically place it on the ground, you hit it, and you get ready to time a jump before the rocket kind of times out to preserve your forward momentum a little bit. And now we've made it onto this rock relatively efficiently. I could even continue, right? If I had a lot of Zonite, I could build another one of these, now on top of the rock, start with a little bit extra height, and keep going. And this is one relatively efficient way to get around Hyrule if you want to, right? It will cost you some Zonite, but it can be very advantageous, and I'm assuming that in the future, in speedruns, this is something that we'll actually use. There might even be a more efficient build, but again, very powerful. And keep in mind, if you land next to a plank, like here, and you take out your Zonite device, like the rocket in my case here, and then you use the ability, it will basically scan for the areas around you, right? Like this. And now I can build it without even having paid like any Zonite. So very powerful. Highly recommend the Autobuild Windbomb. Next up will be our first, I want to say, advanced trick. This will require a little bit more attention because it's not super easy to do, but it's not too hard to do either. So what this is basically a mid-air wing activation. Let's say you're flying out in the open somewhere and you don't have a lot of stamina yet, or you are about to run out of stamina. There's a pretty cool trick you can do. First of all, I'm gonna order my inventory. This is not what I wanted to do. Rest in peace, Rocket. I'm gonna order my inventory for Zonite devices and put my cursor on the wing. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let go of holding forward until Link is basically going back to neutral. This is similar to a mid-air wind bomb input. You wait until he's neutral, and then you press D-pad up to pull up the wing again. Now, this is weird. I'm gonna claw grip a little bit, which means my thumb is pressing down up on the D-pad, and my index finger is basically pressing the stick forward again. And what I'm gonna do now is press X to pull out the wing. When I press X, the menu itself will disappear and the wing will spawn and Link will glide towards it. So all that's left to do is time my B input to land on it. Let me show you. And there we go. Now we landed on our wing mid-air, which means the wing is actually still carried forward by momentum, but Link is also on it, so we can recover our stamina. We can take this even further. If we now switch to the Ultra Hand ability and, for example, place down a rocket, we can actually take this rocket and attach it to the wing, like this, and then hit it. And suddenly we can give our wing a little bit of a boost, right? And we can continue to do so technically. This allows us to traverse the overworld seamlessly. Whenever my wing is about to time out, I can simply do the strategy again. So let's say I'm jumping off the wing now. I get ready to do the same thing again. Hopefully this Aerocuda won't hit me out of the air. This is something that they're actually really good at. I want to basically emphasize that you should be careful around those guys. But once again, I get ready to pull out the wing. I make Link go neutral in the air, press up already, spawn the wing, and then press B to land on it. And it's a very powerful trick. I would really recommend you to get good at this. If you want to, again, keep in mind, I think this is actually a little bit game-breaking. So if you want to have a full casual experience, maybe sometimes you would miss landing on a specific island and use a vehicle that the developers wanted you to use. But it's a very, very powerful tech, in my opinion. And I recommend you to get good at it if you want to traverse the world a little bit more seamlessly. Again, I'm assuming in the future, tech will look very different, but don't sleep on the mid-air wing landings. Now, if you watched my weapon tier list for Breath of the Wild, this next tip might not be a huge surprise to you. I had ranked the Blizzard Rod as the most powerful weapon in the game in Breath of the Wild. And even though there's some pretty broken weapons in this game, this one still ranks incredibly high. If you have a Magic Scepter or Magic Rod and you fuse a Sapphire to it, you can essentially make a Blizzard Rod. And what makes this contraption so powerful is basically its ability to cast an area of effect freeze almost instantaneously. I'm basically gonna alert this entire camp so that it runs out to me. Even gonna wait for the boss bokoblin to get a little bit closer to show you the raw power that this basically is able to do. You can use the throw button to cast the big area of effect freeze to basically make all of the enemies clump together. And then freeze damage still has the capability of dealing essentially triple damage. So what I need to do now is I'm gonna choose a powerful weapon. In my case, maybe this hammer. I don't want to show you all of my weapons here for reasons. And then I'm gonna do a jump attack. This will not only initially break the freeze, but it will also do a second hit, right? A second hit in my case from the plunge attack itself. So you can see how I'm melting through these health bars. Like in my case here, the boss bokoblin was still staggered and I can just refreeze them. I'm so safe. I'm not taking a single piece of damage while constantly controlling the entire camp and setting up triple damage nukes every time I break ice. These enemies don't even get the chance of hitting me. Look at this guy. He's still frozen. I go over here. Dead. Next guy. He was trying to shoot me. Still frozen. Dead. And this is the power of the Saphire Rod. Don't sleep on it. It's relatively easy to make. Yes, you might want to sell a Sapphire every once in a while, but don't sleep on it. It's still as powerful as ever. So the next tip is actually a fairly casual one, and it's something that I was a little bit annoyed at when the game taught you its mechanics, and that's underground exploration. I know I'm in a cave right now just because I don't want to show people anything of the underground. I think it's a pretty cool location to check out when you first play. I'm sure a lot of you have already experienced it. But what the game teaches you about the underground is the use of something called Brightbloom seeds. These Brightbloom seeds basically illuminate the area around you. And there is a line from, I think it's Joshua, in the game that says something like, truly skilled adventurers will fuse Brightbloom seeds to their arrows to illuminate the area. I think that is an incredibly bad thing to teach. I personally right now have around 200 arrows, and through my playthrough, that's pretty much what I had for the most part. Usually around 200 arrows, and people always ask, Lim, why do you have so many arrows? This is something that I'm assuming a lot of you already do, but don't waste your arrows on Brightbloom seeds. There is almost no advantage at all compared to throwing them. If you don't know yet how throwing works, you basically press the throw button, then you press D-pad up, and you select an item that you want to throw. In my case, that's going to be the Brightbloom seeds. You can even like throw them at some sort of arc to get similar trajectories to arrows. I am very mad, honestly, that the game teaches you that truly skilled adventurers will use arrows for them, because honestly, it's just a waste of your arrows. Don't use arrows for Brightbloom seeds. It's a pretty short tip, but it will save you a ton of arrows. Don't fall for the game's bait. So the next two tips are basically going to be a little bit of a lesson to weapons, and specifically how fusion kind of changes the meta a little bit. I want to start by talking about spears. This is my first tip. And how they basically have improved through this game. But to start, I want to explain something that has changed about the game. So in Breath of the Wild, there was something called double hits. When you use a two-hand weapon and basically spin towards the enemy with your back facing them, you would get 2 hits every single rotation. This was patched. Now, only on the first rotation, you still get 2 hits, with some specific enemies being kind of an exception to this. But two-hand weapons are not as powerful as they used to be. But spears are more powerful than ever. I'm careful here to not show you some of the spears I own, but you can reach insane damage numbers with these spears, because What was holding spears back before was essentially their fuse power, or attack power, sorry, the attack power was much too low. I think the highest ones that you could find would maybe be a super modified Royal Guard Spear with really bad durability and 50 damage. That would be pretty good for a little bit, but it would break within like 12 hits. Now, you can use a very powerful base spear. There's one that you might encounter in the main story and fuse a really powerful item to it. Again, I'm not showing you all of the horns I have here, but they can reach incredible damage values. Spears, in my opinion, are now super powerful. Their DPS is still the same. And let's head into the next tip, which is going to be tip number 7, which is fuse modifiers. There's one fuse modifier specifically called Water Warrior. What this modifier does is it basically makes it so that when Link is wet, which you can do through several means, and don't quote this wrongly, your attack power doubles, right? So if you have a high base power spear, let's invent a spear, okay? Your base power spear has 20 damage and you fuse a 30 damage horn on it. That's a 50 damage spear. Now, if you are wet, this spear does 100 damage, right? Now, if you use attack up modifiers, like a triple attack up elixir, your spear does 150 damage. Through specific combos, I wouldn't be surprised if we can make a spear that hits 200, 300, or maybe even something ridiculous like 500 by abusing fuse modifiers together with powerful horns and base weapons. So keep in mind that you have modifiers on your spears, right? And they can have 2 modifiers. First of all, they can have this blue one, which could be the Water Warrior one. But they can also have this yellow one, which could be an attack up one. So let's say you have a Water Warrior attack up base spear and you fuse your most powerful horn to it. You are in the rain and you use an attack up elixir. Suddenly your hits might do 200. Like, you can do this and you've just done 1,000 damage, right? So don't sleep on these combinations, and especially spears are my tips for weapon crafting in the game. Now, the next tip is a tip for general exploration. Once you get to a point where you've ran around Hyrule for the most part, but you get to the point where you want to clean up specific areas, right? You've gotten kind of a gist of the overworld, but you know specific goals that you still want to accomplish, like reaching a specific shrine, reaching a specific location. Don't shy away from teleporting to a tower. I have tried multiple times to make it work that I want to run to a certain location, I want to get to a stable and get my horse. Look at this warp, right? This is going to take around 20 seconds. I'm going to warp to a tower, and then the second I get to the tower, I can immediately activate it, skip the cutscenes, get shot to the sky, and I can even combine this with the trick we've shown earlier, right? I just run here, skip the cutscene, boom, I'm flying up. And now if I wanted to, let's say there was a chasm on the Great Plateau that I wanted to still explore, I could combine this with the Midair Wing trick, right? There's gear in the game that makes skydiving even more efficient. You may or may not have found that yet. But again, now we can combine it with the wing trick from earlier. So let's say I want to get to the Temple of Time, actually, right? And instead of climbing up the Great Plateau, I just chose the tower. So what I'll do now is I'll once again sort by Zonai device, get ready to do my trick, neutral the stick, press up, spawn the wing, boom, and we're on our way. Basically, don't try, once you're in the stage where you want to clean up the overworld and you don't want to really explore anymore. I also really like how the skydiving music just randomly ends. Don't shy away from just teleporting to a tower. They're powerful for a reason. They give you a super good, easy vantage point. Later in the game, you might even get other locations that are high in the sky that you can use to teleport to and get wherever you want quickly. So if you're really in this cleanup process and you are not trying to explore every inch of a specific map anymore, don't shy away from using your tower to teleport you into the sky and maybe combine it with the wing trick to reach your locations quickly. My next tip is going to be to use Acsend for exploration. What does this mean? Again, spoiler warning, I'm not showing a big thing here, but I'm at the Gerudo Canyon and I'm going to show a specific cave to teach this concept. Right here, there's a huge cliff. We could either build multiple contraptions or climb for a long time to get up there, but there's also a cave down here. So what does this mean? Let's head into the cave. I think in my case here, the enemies inside the cave might be respawned. I will try to just avoid them. Hopefully they leave me alone. Because I just want to teach you this concept real quick. I'm gonna basically run to the end of the cave. And look at the map right now. You can see that Link is slowly but surely moving under the big mountainside. I'm gonna make sure to get as deep into the cave as I possibly can, and then use Acsend. Right here, it doesn't really seem to be possible, but here it is. And what's gonna happen is that I essentially just saved a bunch, and I mean a bunch of climbing, by basically making it under the mountain. And you can see this cutscene here takes quite long, and suddenly I'm all the way up here. Look how high I am in comparison now. And I'm sure there's multiple other ways of basically using this to your advantage to gain a lot more height. The game, even if you pay a lot of attention, has hidden multiple little cliff sides around the world to use Ascent to your advantage. But don't sleep on the fact that you can do it within caves. Maybe there's even areas where you can use it in the underground. And I can't wait to see how speedruns are going to be using Ascent to their advantage for really clever and cool routing choices. So don't sleep on Ascent in general. I feel like sometimes people forget that they even have the rune, but even use it for exploration more than just solving puzzles. And that makes us arrive at our last tip. And I know, this is a cheesy one, and am I using this tip to reach 10 tips? Yes. Take your time, guys. I know right now everything is super exciting. There's 700 YouTube videos out there, early speedruns, and you maybe experience the fear of missing out. Try to keep that to a minimum. And this might sound easier than it actually is, but keep in mind, Breath of the Wild speedruns were exciting and relevant 6 years into the game's release window, right? Take your time. You only get this casual experience a single time. I have personally not even beaten 50%, not even beaten 30% of this game, and I will take another 2 weeks before I even do any speedruns or join the speedrunning discords. I want to enjoy this experience. I get mind blown every single day playing this game. This is shaping up to be my favorite game ever. So as much as I preach speedrunning being a fun hobby, which it is, don't get me wrong, and it will be really exciting to look into all of these routes. I personally am excited to be running all shrines in the future on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/imcube, a little bit of a plug at the end. But take your time. I will certainly do so. I will take multiple weeks probably still to finish my casual playthrough, wrap up everything that I want to do, and please do the same. You only get your casual experience once. If you really want to speedrun, I'm not stopping you, but I just wanted to give you this tip on the road. But thank you so much for watching. There will be commentated speedruns and challenge runs on this channel following shortly, probably in June mostly. I hope you enjoy your casual experience of the game and your early speedrun experience. I see you in the next one.